Good morning. You're watching Business World Live. I'm Jess De Los Santos, and here are today's biggest stories from the economic and corporate front. Prices of basic commodities like sugar and onion are up, while oil firms roll back fuel prices. The country's manufacturing sector continues to rebound after posting its performance in more than 4 years. Financial markets are closed today in observance of Eid al-Fitr, but before going on a holiday, the local bourse dipped further below 6,800. And we're 6 days away from the 2022 polls. Presidential candidates try to campaign in more areas in the home stretch to the elections. We begin our broadcast with government agencies now scrambling to address the increase in prices of basic goods such as sugar and even onion. Shaila Francisco with the story.
To those who like their coffee and desserts extra sweet, you may have to tighten your belts as prices of sugar increased from last month. Based on the Agriculture Department's price monitoring, white sugar in some markets are reaching as high as 80 pesos. The Sugar Regulatory Administration explains production was affected by La Nina with typhoons destroying sugarcane fields. Demand also increased now that the economy has fully opened. This is why the Trade Department continues to push for sugar imports.
Working with the SRA, talagang pinupush nga natin yung siguraduhin maraming supply ng sugar kasi naapektuhan ng Typhoon Odette yung local production. And as you know, we support local production. In fact, bili natin lahat ng locally produced. Pero pag ano yung gap sa demand, yung kakulangan at hindi ma-meet ng local supply and demand, dapat i-allow yung importation. So we really have to continue with that policy.
The agency says there are cheaper sugar, priced at 55 to 60 pesos in supermarkets under the Presyo Reasonable Dapat program. Meanwhile, prices of onions are also up in some markets with lean season coming up. To recall, some farmers complained about oversupply this past month. To address this, the DA launched its Sagip Sibuyas project. Under the project, farmer cooperatives or associations in Central Luzon or Mimaropa can be given up to 5 million pesos in capital grants to deliver onions to markets, buy onions, and set up cold storages to extend its shelf life.
We are able to put all those sibuyas cold storage facilities, then monthly, May, June, July, August, at least for the next 4 months, meron tayong steady supply.
The DA has allotted 8 million pesos for the project. Shaila Francisco, We Are One News.
Now here's a much-needed respite for motorists. Oil firms are implementing a rollback on fuel products today. As of 6 a.m., 11 companies have cut diesel prices by 1 peso and 15 centavos per liter and gasoline prices by 65 centavos per liter. Some companies have also slashed kerosene prices by 1 peso and 15 centavos per liter. This comes after the multiple price increases commuters saw in the past 2 weeks, including the big-time price hike last Tuesday. Meanwhile, the Finance Department reports that taxes collected from marked fuel products reached over 450 billion pesos as of April 28. The volume of marked fuel was over 40 billion liters as of end April. The country's manufacturing sector posted its best performance in more than 4 years in April, reflecting better business condition as pandemic restrictions eased. Philippine manufacturing PMI rose to 54.3 in April from 53.2 in March as new orders and production increased. That's the highest PMI reading since the 54.8 reading in November 2017. April was also the third consecutive month that the PMI went above the 50 mark, which separates growth from contraction. But S&P Global economist Mariam Baluchi says although output growth picked up in April, global headwinds from the war in Ukraine and the lockdowns in China led to further pressure on global supply chains. Ferdinand Marcos Jr. retains his lead in the Pulse Asia pre-election survey held from April 16 to 21st. This as he sustained his 56% mark from March. His closest contender, Vice President Leni Robredo, scored 23%. This puzzled political pundit Dennis Coronacion, who thought that Robredo was gaining momentum last month. But for political analyst Edmund Tayaw, the ranking of those trailing Marcos Jr. is no longer significant. However, Pulse Asia President Ronald Holmes reminded the public that at the end of the day, the only poll result that matters is that of the elections.
Hanggat hindi bumoboto ang tao, hindi natin masasabi na tapos na ang halalan. Ang nagdidesisyon rito ay hindi yung mga respondent namin sa survey. Yan ay sumasalamin lamang do sa disposisyon nung panahon na yun. Ang magdidesisyon kung sino mananalo ay ang bawat botante na may kanya-kanyang karapatan na pumili sa mga kandidato kung sino ang kanilang iaharap. Yan yung sovereignty ng voter na ating dapat gagalangin.
Now, how voters will decide on May 9 will determine how the economy will recover after some heavy blows due to the pandemic. Question is, who among the aspirants has the best economic agenda and track record to get us there? Let's get insights from Professor Emmanuel Leico, economist and president of the Pamantasan ng Lungsod ng Maynila. Prof. Leico, good morning.
Good morning, Jess, and thank you for having me back.
Well, thank you for joining us. Now, give us an idea, sir, just for us to have a better grasp. What's at stake here on May 9? How crucial will the country's vote be when it comes to the Philippines' economic rebound?
The outcome of these elections is really crucial to our people, particularly when the economy is just beginning to recover. We are not yet in full recovery, and therefore, our economy continues to be vulnerable to spikes in the COVID-19, perhaps an upsurge that people are talking about. The economy might get locked down again, but fortunately, we already have a 2-year experience, so we may not need to go back on a full lockdown, and people are now talking about just granular lockdowns, but then again, the new president will be the lead manager, orchestrator of how the country will continue to respond to the challenges of COVID-19. So I see healthcare and the economy will continue to be the major headlines once the new president is announced next week or immediately thereafter.
Okay, that brings me to my next question, Professor Leico. What needs to be done here? Is there a need to somehow maneuver a policy shift, or it's really more a case of policy continuity that's what's needed at this stage?
Well, a major concern right now is inflation, and I think that cannot be taken out of context. Food security is a major concern for now. So how do we secure our food supply? How do we make sure that the people continue to have food on the table without creating so much disruption, so much movement in the prices? Because prices will inevitably make it impossible for many of our people. Once the prices move up, they will not be able to buy, and at the same time, people are clamoring for higher wages so that they can be more resilient. They can see that there might be movements in prices, but if the wages are not moving, the ability of our people to purchase their basic needs will be in danger. So people are clamoring for higher wages, stability in food prices, stability in our food security. Those are going to be the major challenges of the new president. So we'd like to see the new president to be that of, while he or she will hire or appoint people in his or her team, the new president should be the lead economic manager. He should be able to discern issues that will have long-lasting effects. So, for example, when we experienced shortage in rice, do we import? Mm-hmm. We can import probably in the short term, but then we should look at rice industry being stable. So now we're talking about onions, we're talking about sugar, the easy thing to do is to import. But that can be at the peril of our industries in the long term. So the new president should have an economic strategy. He or she should have a vision
Okay.
on what to do in the short term and what to do in the long term.
Now, Professor Leco, you just mentioned that the next president should have at least an economic strategy. I mean, it's more and more looking like a two-way race now between Ferdinand Marcos Jr. and Vice President Leni Robredo. Based from what we've heard so far, who do you think has articulated the best, or at least so far what for you should be a working economic agenda or strategy for the next 6 years?
Well, perhaps because the two candidates are appealing for votes, they are only able to present a simple economic solution. So, for example, contender Senator Bongbong was saying that he will keep the prices of rice at 20 pesos per kilo. Is that realistic or not? I don't think that is realistic because you have to pay the farmers, you have to pay the millers, you have to pay the transporters, you have to pay the retailers. I'm not sure 20 pesos will be doable. But then again, during the election, candidates are presenting programs that are easy to understand that will make the best appeal. So it may not be the most realistic, but I think in terms of appealing to issues that really hit the people directly, I think that would be effective. But then on May 10 or May 11, shortly thereafter, once you are declared as president, now comes the hard work. How will you now ensure access of people to food, to rice, in the most realistic manner? It is not as simple as just saying that I will make sure that the prices remain at that level. Now, in terms of Vice President Leni, her being portrayed as an economics graduate, having been very active in the response to people when they are in need, I think the Vice President, if she gets elected, will have to present a program of action that will mobilize the whole government, not only in terms of when there are disasters or when there are emergencies, but also in the long term. What would be her vision of a fully developed economy for the Philippines? How are you going to interact with other countries? What kind of economy are you going to present at the macro level? Is this going to be an advanced economy, self-reliant, resilient, or is this going to be a continuation of the development economics that mostly opened our economy, but at the expense of our local industries? We have to be able to see what the Vice President will offer in terms of a advancing, developing, self-reliant economy.
Okay, now Professor Leco, I just want to bring back the talk here to a report that was released by Goldman Sachs over the weekend saying that a Robredo presidency would mean a policy shift and a Marcos presidency would mean policy continuity. Do you subscribe to that notion? And what do you think is needed by the country at this stage?
Well, during the campaign, the candidates are appealing to the electorate in the best manner that they can. So I will hold off my judgment in terms of what economic programs they are truly going to offer. But right now, I think what would be the three issues that will have to be addressed by the new president will be, first of all, healthcare. How are you going to respond to the continuing threat of COVID-19? Emergency response is one thing, but in the long term, people also get sick of other causes. Cancer remains a high threat to our health. Cardiac problems of our people continue to be a problem. There are common healthcare problems that need to be addressed. So it is time for the new president to come up with a health sector agenda that will address not only COVID-19, but also access to healthcare, financing of healthcare, making sure that all the population throughout the country will have access to quality healthcare. That will be a major problem. That will be a major task for the new president. How do you finance a quality health service delivery for all in the country? And alongside that is the continuing economic recovery for the country. We have not really fully recovered. So what will be your short-term, mid-term, long-term agenda in order to push and stimulate the economy? Number one, you have to make sure that there will be price stability and at the same time reliable access to food by our people, particularly by the poor.
Okay.
So how will you do and how will you how will you make that accessible to people?
Right. So definitely lots of things at stake here for the next president, from healthcare and to economic recovery. Thank you very much for your insights this morning. Again, that's Professor Emmanuel Leco, economist and president of Pamantasan ng Lungsod ng Maynila. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Jess.
Now, this just in, Isabong operations will end today, May 3rd. This is a final decision of President Rodrigo Duterte, who made the announcement during his taped address on Monday night and was aired just a few minutes ago. The president made the decision upon the recommendation of Interior Secretary Ed Año. Final details will be released later today. Now we're down to our last 6 days before Election Day. Here's where candidates are headed today. The Bongbong Marcos-Sara Duterte tandem will be holding their meeting de avance today. The unit team event will be held in Guimbal, Iloilo this afternoon. Vice President Leni Robredo will also visit Iloilo. Her team will be holding a province-wide pasasalamat program for supporters. And later this evening, the Vice President will be visiting Negros Occidental for a send-off program. She will also be endorsed by Bacolod City's Team Ascenso and Grupo Progreso. Senator Manny Pacquiao will be campaigning in Marawi. He is also expected to visit Cotabato. Senator Ping Lacson will attend a town hall meeting this morning in Muntinlupa. Later this afternoon, he and his running mate Tito Soto will head to Nasugbu, Batangas, where they will hold another town hall meeting with various sectoral groups. And Manila Mayor Isko Moreno has not announced any public engagements yet for today. Now, coming right up after the break, a joint venture between Megawide and two Japanese companies will build 2 stations of the Metro Manila subway at a price tag of more than 13 billion pesos. More of that and other stories when Businessworld Live returns. Stay with us. Wait lang. And you're still watching Business World Live here on One News. I'm Jess De Los Santos. Now, the local bourse on trading hall today in observance of Idil Fitr, but that might just give the PSCI some much-needed breathing room after it extended losses on Monday, tanking further below 6,800. As you can see right here, the main index little changed on a Monday, but still ended on the downside, lower by 0.15% to 6,721. Now, Manny Cruz of Papa Securities said investors were on risk of mode. That's ahead of inflation data in the Fed meeting. Inflation data, of course, expected Thursday, with consensus pointing to above government's 4% target at 4.6%. The Fed, meanwhile, is expected to raise rates by 50 bips, but will be leaning on a higher hike by June as U.S. inflation remains elevated. Now, speaking of central bank actions elsewhere in Asia, let's take a look at how the rest of the markets in the region is performing. As you can see here, Australian stocks here dipping. The S&P 200 is down in the red by 0.1%. This as their central bank is expected to hike rates. It's going to be their first since 2010. Now, Kospi or South Korean stocks, however, somehow managing to swing to gains here. That's after starting the day in the red. Kospi up by 0.4%. Elsewhere in Asia, a number of stocks also on trading halt here, the likes of Japan and China. But as you can see right here, Hong Kong is resuming trading after a break here. The Hang Seng is down by 1.8%. Now, a joint venture composed of Megawide Corporation and two Japanese construction companies bagged the 13 billion peso contract to build two stations of the Japan-funded Metro Manila subway. The contract was awarded to the joint venture of Tokyu Construction, Tobishima Construction, and Megawide. The contract involves the construction of the Ortigas North and South subway stations and tunneling works. The contract award still requires concurrence by the Japan International Cooperation Agency and compliance with procurement standards for the Japanese official development assistance loans. And those are the biggest headlines from the business front this Tuesday, May 3, 2022. Join us again tomorrow at exactly 9:30 a.m. You can also catch us on Signal Play. Register for a free account now at www.signalplay.com and stream One News Live anytime, anywhere. I'm Jess De Los Santos. Mask on, wash hands, and stay safe. Philippines, we are One News.